Hi, Professor. My name is Lynn Nguyen, and this is my presentation for the Critical Analysis video, Chapter 10. So for the first question you gave us of what were the ways women participated in war effort? At this time, when the war had started, there was an urge for women to start contributing now that the men were gone. And so 3 million women had joined Red Cross. And then some of the jobs that they did were driving ambulances, spotting airplanes for the civil defense. They served food. They also entertained the soldiers at canteens. They sold war bonds and they organized the family and the economy now that it was out of shape and the men were gone. Here's some pictures and where I found the evidence for that. Now, moving on to what were the various armed forces that women participated in and what was their capacity and was it limited? So, after women were urged to move forward from those initial jobs they had, the it was the idea that women had to contribute more than they were, and so women had actually formed a corp of their own. They called it the WACs, which was coined the term Women's Army Corps, and in that it branched out a lot of different categories. Some of them are the waves, which is referring to the Navy, the Women's Navy, the spars, which is the Coast Guard, the MCWR, which is the Marines, and the WASP, which is the service pilots. And as you can see, some of these women have the pilot uniforms, and they also, not only did they serve in these armed forces, they also created a lot of the airplanes for flying. And the capacity was around 6 million and most likely over because the amount of women who enrolled in the army was probably a decent and fair amount. And then in the book, it mentioned that 6 million women after a certain time had began army work after they had never done so before. And so it should be a very big amount, but it was also very limited. It was yet limited because the jobs were mostly catered towards white women. Black women were still not able to enter in the industry, and they were very much blocked from doing all these jobs. But after those 6 million people entered in, after those corps had been made, the Black women had been able to enter those low industry jobs, but they were still blocked from the higher industry jobs. And later on, that did change somewhat, but they were still doing all those low level industry jobs, which were the clerical work and doing supply areas and things such as that. They were the more less important roles that were still critical, of course. However, they weren't really things with the title. And now moving on to what happened to motherhood after the war and why was it under attack and what did experts think that women needed to do after the war. So once the once the war had ended and men started to come back, it was realized that all the women had to return to their original positions. However, right after the war ended, women were really inspired by their capabilities after the war, and they even mentioned things such as they had they had won the war because women were as strong as men, and women contributed it and men contributed it. It was an effort of two parties. And also, many articles came out at the time supporting the fact that women needed to keep their jobs and they needed to retain it because many didn't want to retain it themselves since they showed it to be more independent. And however, after the war and men actually coming back from their positions, it was revealed that many other men wanted women to go back to their private life. Even after many articles came out of the women wanting to be more independent, having their own jobs, and even in the book, it mentioned that women should let the man know that they're tired of living alone. However, most of these were all ignored because because the reason why it was under attack because men wanted the woman to bring back their submissiveness, the caringness, and the femininity. So one of the things that they had faced during the war were women being nurses, and I guess that kind of integrated into this time where they felt that women should, after their vets came back, They felt like women should be more attentive, they're more in awe of the men, they're much more caring, and they're just very submissive because many people thought that after the men would return, it was very crucial that these women would cater to the men's egos. And also, many men has also written that it would be good for all those married women to quit work and stay at home to manage the children. And in fact, it wasn't really voluntary for those women to quit their work. Even if they wanted to keep it, they couldn't keep those jobs because at that time, the industries decided to all close down to not bring labor to those married women. And at the time also to um to not engage or to lessen the desire for women to be in the workforce, they had played music that said a woman's place is in home all the time over the workrooms, and that kind of integrated it into a woman's mind. It was probably not very effective, but women were, of course, forced to do that, and at this time, it showed a lot of how women were being seen as objects to just satisfy men since they had to cater to those egos, which is a very, very bold and very strange claim to even say. But as we can see how washed these men were of these ideals and how superior they thought of being for a woman, they thought they were above a woman. And one of the pictures I chose for this was "No Job for a Woman," the woman who fought to support the World War II. It conveys the idea of the fact that women had contributed a lot to the war. They were a key player, however, there are now no jobs for them. And despite what they wanted, and of course the motherhood, they were ultimately subjected to please men's egos just after the war. Also, the point that even though they also fought in the war, their needs were not cared of and they were actually all shut down and neglected. And so this concludes my presentation for the week, and thank you very much for listening.